We're live now, Chair.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I'm Councillor Angela Davis, and we're here today for the Economies, Residents and Communities Scrutiny Committee. I'm going to ask everybody, the members of the committee, if they could leave their cameras on today. That just makes it easier for me to chair, to judge the mood of the room, as it were. And we go on to item 1. Sorry, the date's Thursday, the 2nd of October. And we'll go on to item 1, which is apologies for today's meeting. I have had apologies from Councillor Sian Cox. We had any further apologies?
You have, Chair. So you have apologies from committee members, County Councillor Sian Cox, Peter James and Liz Reinenberg, and officers Matt Perry, Catherine James, Nina Davis, Jenny Ashton and John Forsey.
Lovely, thank you very much. And item 2 is the disclosures of interest. So this is to receive disclosures of interest by members relating to items to be considered in the meeting today. And I believe we got a bit of a concern here because, in actual fact, members, if you're in agreement, I would like us to swap our agenda around today so that we listen to item 8, the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, prior to the Strategic Economic Framework, purely because one is looking back and one is looking forward. So no objections? Lovely. Okay, in that case, we have some potential declarations of interest with regard to the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, in that as members, councillors, we've all received a grant for our communities through that, the councillor grant. And it may be that organisations that we're involved in within our communities, our town councils or other community groups, will have had funding through it. I'm hoping that we get a dispensation for that, given it's happening across the council. Councillor Gary, do you want to come in as well?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think I need to declare an interest under the charity that I'm Chief Executive for, that has received 2 rounds of shared prosperity funding, one in the previous year and one in this year's one. And I think that will probably preclude me from the conversation.
Thank you, Councillor Gary. So we're just waiting for some advice on that, but we're hoping, as this is an information paper and reflective, largely looking back, that there's no impact that we can make on that division of monies, and therefore can all proceed as normal. So I'm just waiting on our officers to advise us on that. Gemma, are you back with us?
We are just waiting on a response, so hopefully we'll have that for you by the time you've gone through item 5.
Lovely. So item 3 is the declaration of party whips, and that's to declare disclosures of prohibited party whips which a member has been given in relation to this meeting in accordance with section 78(3) of the Local Government Measure 2011. No, there are no disclosures. And then item 4 is the minutes of our previous meeting. So these are in our pack, pages 5 to 18. And just need to approve those minutes. But with your indulgence, committee, I've just got one query on these that I didn't spot when I read them through. And just as Daniel's here, you could probably clarify this for me. One of the questions was about the governance structure. And I got a bit confused when I was reading it back. Let me just find where it is. Yeah, what was the governance structure? Page 7 of the pack, and officers explained that the structure was informal, but I'd understood it was a joint project with the 4 councils. So I was a bit curious how it goes through cabinet and scrutiny, because there will be 4 councils, 4 cabinets, 4 different scrutinies. And I wonder if perhaps we haven't sort of clarified the answer quite right there.
Okay, yeah, I can step in. That helps, Councillor Angela. So yeah, in terms of the 4 local authorities involved in that project, we follow the standard procedure as it would go traditionally with any paper for approval. So it would first come CLT cabinet, and then cabinet. So that was taken forward. With that current project at the moment, as it's being led by Shropshire and Powys, it's going through the traditional structure of those 2 local authorities alone at the moment, with other authorities consulted should they feel the need to come forward with any questions. So we do have a working group that meet weekly of all 4 local authorities to share any concerns. But yeah, it's the traditional governance model used for any other decision that we make as a local authority.
Yeah, but I was wondering how we then as a scrutiny group would influence that. So we would scrutinise any decision or any project within the POWIS context. But how is that then taken back to the full organisation of the 4 councils?
Any recommendations put forward by scrutiny would those are the 3 local authorities would be informed of those scrutiny decisions, and that would be factored in then to any changes to the document or any of the programmes needed. So those comments are factored in. I will confirm that to date it's only been POWIS that has brought it to scrutiny, but I am aware there's meetings taking place with councillors across the board on that. So we're ahead of the curve on that one.
Oh, lovely. So we would feed into our cabinet senior leadership team, and they would feed it into the overhead project, and then we would hear back there. There we are.
Correct.
Lovely. That was all. I confused myself, I think, in reading that.
It's a lot to get around. There's over 4 councils. So.
Do members have any other comments or additions or changes they would like to make there? No, all happy with those minutes. So can we have do we need a proposer, a seconder, a show of hands?
All 3, please, Chair.
There we are then. Can we have I'm happy to propose them. Councillor Peter? Yeah, second them.
Peter, second, Chair. Yeah.
Thank you. Can we have a show of hands, electronic or hand in the air? We got everybody, Gemma. Gary, is your hand up?
I assume I'll have to abstain because I wasn't there at the meeting.
Good point. Thank you very much for reminding me of that. Yes, lovely.
Great, thank you, Chair.
I wonder.
Who's wondering? Oh, you were there, Councillor Bryan. Lovely. Thank you. Yeah, no, thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to item 5 now, which is our forward work programme, and you can see there we've got the dates for the next 3 meetings there in our forward work programme, and as you can see we had some delayed items for today's meeting. So the sort of structure, the rule is now that if an item is delayed or pulled after it's been published in the public agenda pack, we need an officer or director to come forward and explain to us the reason behind that. So I think the first one is on you, Dan, the rural enterprise policy. No, that's Gwilym, Councillor Gwilym, isn't it?
That's the farm estates paper.
Farm
correct?
estate. So did we have somebody to explain to us why that's been delayed? Diane, did you want to come in?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, apologies. When the paper's draft went to cabinet, it was requested that a longer consultation period was considered. So to enable that consultation period to extend, that doesn't close until the 12th of October. Then we have to analyse the information, and then we'll produce the final policy that will then come back to scrutiny. So it was to do with the timing of the consultation. So that's why that one has been delayed till later in the year.
Okay, so members, I need you to sort of accept, to say if you're happy with that. For your information, I agreed with that delay because I felt, and I think Councillor Gary as well, we felt it was important that all the information available come to scrutiny, and that public consultation was quite an important part of that. But members, we do need you to sort of accept that, as it were, if that's okay. Any objections? All happy? Okay, what we need to do is to make sure that papers come in a timely manner, and if they are delayed, that there is genuine and purposeful reason behind that delay, rather than just we run out of time or something. And that's the process we're trying to follow. So the next one was the leisure review, and that's been withdrawn. And who's going to explain that to us? Is that Diane again? You're in the hot seat today, Diane.
I am. The leisure review doesn't come under my directorate. It comes under Nina Davis. but she's given me some wording to read out to you today, if that's all right, Chair. So Nina has said an update on the leisure review was penciled into the ERC forward work programme. It was a holding position only, and officers provided information to say that a report would not be coming forward in that timescale. There is no date for when a report will be coming forward at the current time. As soon as this is known, the scrutiny chair will be informed and given the option to consider bringing the item to committee as appropriate.
Thank you, Diane. So again, to explain, Councillor Gary and I, in our work programming session, we were privy to this discussion, given we've got a new portfolio holder and we all have quite strong views about how this should go forward. Again, it was felt that we need all the accurate information to hand before any sort of quite dramatic decisions are made on this front. So members, are you happy with that this is being delayed until we can make a proper and final decision? Lovely, thank you. And then the last one was the National Park paper, which was for information only. And I think I can fill you in on this because it was felt that scrutiny isn't just an information providing session. This is one that affects all members across the council, really, particularly those in the north. And it was felt that this was a member development session for all councillors, as opposed to a scrutiny paper that we could have impact on. So hopefully you're happy with that decision taken on your behalf, really. Okay, so we move on to the next item on the agenda, item 6, which is item 8 on your agenda pack. So to find this information, we need to go to page 43. And I believe Dan is here as Head of Economy and Climate to bring this paper to us. And we also have with us new Cabinet Member, Councillor Glyn Preston, the Cabinet Member for an Economic Power. So welcome, Glyn, your first scrutiny session as a Cabinet Member. So over to you, I think, Daniel, unless Councillor Glyn wants to do an introduction. No, lovely. Right, I'm just going to check, though, the responses. I think, Councillor Gary, did you decide you're going to leave?
Yeah, I think I'm going to leave. I will end up as an attendee, so I can listen in, but I won't contribute to this session. So I don't know if I have to actually leave.
I think Gemma now will put you in the back room.
Yes,
and
we've done that for you.
Lovely, thank you. For the rest of us, it's unless it was a direct interest, as in Gary's case, we're happy to. We're fine to sit in and continue as normal, having declared that interest. Okay, thank you. Sorry, Dan, I won't interrupt you again.
That's okay. Thank you, Chair. And thank you very much for the opportunity today to I think that, as you were saying, Chair, there's really two elements to my presentations today. There's first of all a chance to reflect on the shared prosperity funding we received here in Powys, the period 23 to 25 programme review, and then also look forward in terms of our economic strategy going forward. So I think without further ado, I'll go through this presentation, and essentially I think this is a chance for members to understand what was achieved by the shared prosperity funding we received here in Powys. And I would say I think slide number 5 is probably one of the key slides today. So yeah, so without further ado, so it was launched in 2022, the Shared Prosperity Fund. It was UK government programme replacing EU structural funds, and the aims were to boost productivity, spread opportunities and improve public services, restore that sense of community and empower local leaders and communities. And our allocation for that period from 23 to 25 was £27.2 million. That was what we received here. So Shared Prosperity Fund, as I was saying, 27.2 million. The priority areas supported as identified by UK government here were community in place, supporting local business, people and skills, multiply. And as you can see, there's a pie chart showing the allocation. So by far the biggest areas we were looking to focus on were community in place and supporting local business. In all, 130 projects delivered across all sectors, private, public, voluntary, etc., and delivered through a mixture of commissioned projects, open funding calls, and targeted interventions. It was a regional project in terms of how it was the oversight and the reporting back to UK government. So we worked in partnership, and we still do, with Ceredigion on that, just to share that resource really, and to make sure our recording was synchronised across our economic CJC as well as the Growing Mid Wales partnership. And as part of that, then we had delegated authority to make decisions about how funding was spent at a local level. So an open call, a local partnership, and a decision. Local partnerships were responsible for making programme decisions. Partnerships included stakeholders from a range of organisations across Powys, as well as SLT and a cabinet member. Obviously, as the programme came to an end, there was as it neared its conclusion, a delegated decision was approved to enable swift decision making and ensure full utilisation of the funding. So that was agreed by the partnership, actually, with delegated decisions were made where appropriate, given the timescales we were working within that. And I should say that the local partnership had a really good cross-section of our communities on that, with fair representation. So this is certainly, I think, one of my proudest slides as part of this presentation, actually. And what, if you ask me what did that achieve, and I think some of the headlines here speak for themselves, really, with close to 300 jobs created and almost 500 jobs safeguarded, 23.2 million increased amount of investment. So that's additional funding that was used to match what was delivered via UK SPF. 113 new businesses created, 3,500 potential entrepreneurs supported to be business ready, over 10,000 people supported to gain a qualification or complete a course, 217 facilities supported or created, over 3,500 volunteering numbers as a result of support, and 55 low or zero carbon energy infrastructures installed here in Powys. So you can see there's some really strong figures then, actually, what we achieved on that, and we're still, that legacy is there to this day. And actually it's really encouraging seeing some of those companies that we have supported in the past using SPF now grow, now look to the next stage, and exporting globally. Okay, so if I'm just going to some of the examples here, so transition and resilience schemes. So as arts and culture, and whilst I she mentioned the business side of things there as well, I did mention some of the volunteers and some of the organisations, but actually there was an element around supporting 10 arts and culture organisations here in Powys, and they were facing funding cuts from the usual sources. So we're helping them become more resilient and sustainable. So business planning, governance reviews, looking at new income strategies, collaboration, training and asset improvement, funding of feasibility studies and new websites to attract new members. 2 organisations were actually saved from closure, and many freelance jobs created. And it was really strengthening those partnerships and our community engagement as part of that. And also the bilinguals of the Welsh language, sustainability and equality. It really helped to improve that sector resilience here. The Business Boost Growth Grant, this is where we had a number of companies who the Welsh Government does offer funding support mechanisms for companies, but quite often the SMEs within our community, and as many of you may know, that over 90% of our business community are either self-employed or small, medium and micro businesses. So we really targeted that missing support using our SPF there. And that was across all sectors, whether it was agricultural, digital, energy, tourism, etc. Yeah, so 88 businesses received grants, hundreds of jobs created, as I mentioned previously, and safeguarded, just under £10 million of increased investment, and 48 businesses introduced new products, and 25 businesses adopted new technologies and processes. And it did really help boost local employment. It just gave those smaller companies an opportunity to bid for some funding, which would help them get to the next stage, which was very well received. And as a result, the result boosted local employment and that economic resilience, and it did stimulate local supply chains and diversified economy. And I was saying it was across all sectors, whether it's for fencing contractors and farming businesses, through to food businesses looking to diversify with some new kit around food manufacturing, food processing. It really was across all sectors. I have got a couple of videos here which will be in the pack. I won't play them now, but they're there for you to visit them should you choose. So as an example, there was Hay Festival received some support, as did the Early Intervention Youth Support Shared Prosperity Fund and People and Skills. And I should say as well, some of these are continuing to receive support as part of the transition here with SPF. Okay. So reflecting back on that period of that SBF, what worked well and what were the challenges essentially? So certainly the local partnership, whilst at times the governance that was quite onerous, and actually I'm sure you're fully aware that getting diaries sometimes can be a challenge. Getting decisions made quickly was something, but actually having that knowledge from all those sectors was really priceless for us here in Powys. And there was that strong community engagement and partnerships, PAVO, for example, and that allowed for funding to reach all sectors. The regional working of it, so rather than going to the traditional sort of hotbeds of where our communities traditionally receive support, maybe because the local skills were stronger in those communities to access funding, it actually did allow for that regional working to spin out from the centre, as it were, really, and reach those communities who felt they needed greater engagement. And as I was saying, a wide range of projects supported all sectors and priorities. There was a clear high demand and a need for business support. And again, that's been reflected in our programme going forward. Challenges. There was challenges. I think it's fair to say the short delivery timescales. Quite often, the approval of the funding did take time to come through from central government. That gave my team, the officials, then a shorter window to be able to process those claims, evidence the spend, the match, what have you, really, and ensure compliance. Obviously, with the guardians of the public purse when it came to such schemes, so we had to make sure the right due diligence was taken. And quite often, with the timescales released to us, that did prove a challenge at times. And reporting requirements that were resource intensive. As you saw, the vast number of projects we supported there, we did have some allowance to cover staff costs, but in reality, we were having to process a lot of information in a very short period of time, which did create stress points within the system. And also, I think the lack of formal guidance at times. There was, as you can imagine, many local authorities across the whole of the UK were coming up with some questions and some innovative projects to support. Some local authorities were focusing very much on their business as usual, whereas we were trying to be a bit more innovative here in Powys and actually support some of those rural communities who don't always fall within the traditional branch of what government support was. So it was sometimes we did have challenges around the clear guidance from UK government, and the challenges multiply as well. That was around increasing numeracy skills for adults. We did have challenges delivering that in terms of our network here in Powys, and I think that was UK-wide, if I'm honest.
Okay.
So moving forward, we're in this sort of transition period, as it were, essentially. So we're currently working with the WLJ, the Welsh Local Government Association, on what the future of the funding mechanism is going to be, and we're in consultation as we speak with them, as well as many other local authorities across the UK, to understand actually what the future funding framework will be. However, for the 25-26 period, the Powys allocation was 9.1 million. So well down on what we had received previously. So some difficult decisions had to be made and undertaken as part of understanding where we prioritise that work. So we chose to prioritise to maintain continuity and avoid gaps in provision. What we didn't want to see is projects we'd supported grow in momentum, but then ceased to operate or fall down between the gaps because of that funding wasn't there anymore. Obviously we do work with those. I'll come on to those shortly in terms of how we mentored some of those companies and some of those organizations to evolve and to adapt and to be able to find their own funding. The culture of grant resilience is a difficult one to break quite often, and it's something we are working on going forward. I think my next set of slides will give you some ideas on how we can try to address that. So in terms of the funding priorities for this transition period, it was healthy, safe and inclusive communities, support for business, thriving places and skills. So it just gives you an example there of EU structural funds, SBF, the transition year we're in, and the future funding. March isn't a million miles away. So we are currently pushing for decisions on how that will be delivered via the Welsh Government, UK Government, how that partnership is going to work. So to date, in terms of the 25-26 transition year, we have supported projects for young people and adults seeking work, SME support grants and advisory services, community capacity building projects across rural areas, green initiatives such as carbon reduction projects, and development of the visitor economy. Just a couple of examples here of some of the projects we've undertaken. Obviously, we've used, where appropriate, some of that funding has been utilised for ourselves in terms of strengthening our community's resilience to climate change. The carbon reduction investor save in Powys County Council, 1.4 million. So installation of energy saving low carbon technologies in corporate buildings, reduce council revenue costs, and support the council's journey towards net zero. To date, there's been 40 decarbonisation projects across 24 buildings. And actually doing the climate route map towards 2030, we'd like to see a 10% reduction in our emissions as part of that work. So there's some really good outputs coming out on the back of that. And again, I think there's one, Chair, that was mentioned earlier in terms of the anti-poverty fund, where there's allocation per councillors for projects within their own constituencies.
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously, given, you know, I mentioned about the resource hungry that to deliver a grant is, given the nature of our teams here in Powys and the number of staff we have. So we're very fortunate in Mid Wales. We have some very experienced deliverers out there for us who can reach our communities and have got that experience. And one of those being Ante Cymru. So Ante Cymru are a organisation active here in Wales, supporting businesses to grow and thrive. And some of you may well have they during the last round of UK SPF funding, they had the shops in, I think it was Newtown, Brecon, I think it was one in Welshpool as well, across the region. They were opening these shops for some smaller businesses to actually step out and try their toes into direct sales to the public, and mentoring those companies then in terms of what they need to do to grow, employment law, IT skills, etc. So all that was part of that, and offering on-site and outreach delivery activity across Powys to support pre-start, early stage and existing businesses. So we have an excellent relationship with Ante Cymru. They're nimble in how they work, and actually they can really help grow our economy and those people looking to do direct sales, etc., and step into the commercial world. As I mentioned previously, we did support business support, and I'm pleased to say we've done that again. The Capital Business Fund just recently closed, and again, grants of 5 to 25,000 to micro and small medium enterprises in Powys. Massively oversubscribed. We could have probably spent that 10, 20 times over, given the number of applications we've received. So the scoring on that is quite stringent, unfortunately. But again, it's that capital funding for projects that support business growth, job creation and sustainability, and prioritises early stage and scale up businesses. So again, we're not looking to duplicate what Welsh Government can do in terms of some of their support under the Economic Futures Fund, EFF. It's looking how we can actually support some of those smaller companies here in Powys. Yeah, again, some of the examples of the projects we're funding under the transition period. The Growing Mid Wales Career, so working with NPTC College. Yeah, it's an internet-based platform designed to streamline work experience placements. It's essentially, it's an app, developing an app for work experience, rather than the old-fashioned way of doing things. That actually, it's allowed for those learners to gain work experience that much easier, and connecting employers and educational institutions in Powys. And actually, with the rise in the industry around retrofit, insulation, EV infrastructure, and energy connectivity, we're seeing that as a real focus for that work in terms of our climate resilience here in Powys. And again, as previously mentioned, you know, some of the work we do here is actually really, really important to our young learners, and those areas where, unfortunately, you know, the NEETs, not education, employment or training, we're trying to reduce the risk of that happening in some of our wards. So giving young people a range of tools, strategies to face problems that occur in their lives. So SPF isn't just about business support, it's really fundamental projects here, working with youth workers and providing holistic assessment to identify the underlying causes and offer tailored intervention. So we've been working very closely with our education colleagues on that one. So just an example again of how SPF works across the organisation. Okay, so just in terms of the governance, etc., we had in this very short period of time we had to operate in. So it's delegated decision making retained during the transition year funding period due to tight timescales, and decisions were informed by lessons learned, including avoiding funding gaps, addressing delivery capacity, and responding to economic pressures. So again, as I was saying, the business grant was continued as an example of that. And projects selected where a clear need is demonstrated, e.g. as I just mentioned, Powers Capital Business Awards, but also using our partners such as Anti-Cymru and PTC Group. We know they've got the expertise to deliver on time, to deliver a quality product for us. So utilising those partners as accurately as possible. And again, alignment ensured with regional and national strategies. Yeah, so support given to projects with strong potential impact. And, the anti-poverty fund there that you've all received, that was an opportunity really to make some differences very quickly in our communities and demonstrate the benefit needed by the closure of the scheme, which is March, which isn't a million miles away, as you're aware. Yeah, anticipated needs of Powers communities and businesses considered throughout the process. Okay, so just to summarise, the Shared Prosperity Fund has delivered tangible benefits across Powers, supporting our businesses, creating jobs, improving skills, and strengthening communities. The 25-26 transition year ensures continuity while a new funding framework is developed. And I can assure you we're working very hard behind the scenes to ensure the maximum benefit for us here in Powers. And lessons learned have helped shape how the transition year is being delivered and will help shape the next phase of investment in Powers. So I think at that point, I'll stop sharing my screen there and we'll move to any questions. But as I was saying, essentially, we are in that position now of waiting to hear what the new round of funding will be and actually how we can utilise that with your guidance going forward. Thank you.
Lovely, Dan. Thank you very much. And thank you for putting that presentation together for us, because as we found in our pre-meet, members found the original documents really difficult to read. So we were able to permit you to do that for us because it contains all the same information, but just delivered in a different way. And I think that members will agree that that was far easier to follow and digest. So over to members. Do you have any questions or comments you'd like to make? Thank you. Lovely. So Councillor Peter.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. Yeah, thanks for that, Dan. I just had 3 questions, if I may, or 3 points. First one was on the key achievements slide, and yeah, I thought that was excellent news. Especially as you said, Dan, boosting the local economy, and we can see how it's helping businesses move to the next stage. However, it talked a lot about jobs, businesses, products being created. And I just wanted to sort of tease out a bit more if we do any further monitoring to actually then measure the success of whether those jobs remained in place, those products were successful, or whether it's deemed to be jobs done because of funding.
Shall I answer that question now, Councillor?
Yes, please do.
Yeah, great. Okay, yes, it's a good point because actually, concerns we had about job creation was actually it can be quite difficult to measure because obviously the funding period is so short. We had to be able to evidence that those jobs we could for at least a year. So it's actually in terms of the sustainability of that business case that company is putting forward, they had to agree to those jobs being in place for at least a year after the funding was provided. So it's actually that long-term sustainability of those that funding was in place because the risk was, say, I'm going to create 10 jobs. Great. Okay. Here's money for 10 jobs. And then the scheme closes, those jobs are gone. So actually the longevity of that was something we have monitored. And we will continue to, I'm a huge believer in jobs created. Actually, I think giving those companies that financial support just to take that next step is critical, really. And this was never about, supporting some of those medium or large enterprises here in Paris. This is about the smaller operations who, may have someone working part-time who's actually given them confidence to create that job full-time. But yeah, no, the monitoring of that did continue as much as we were within our powers to do that. And actually, those projects coming forward now, obviously there'd be any reference to jobs created is checked again. So yeah, no, it's a good point.
Okay, good. Thank you, Dan. The other 2 questions I had was number 1 was on the lessons learned slide, and I think there was a starting point there that talked about local partnerships. I just wanted to ask if you involved town councils, because I don't seem to recollect Newtown Town Council being involved in this, and whether or not going forwards that could be something you could consider and at least share this presentation with them to start that engagement?
I can, yes, indeed, and certainly this did complement some of the placemaking work done under the Welsh Government scheme, because this did run in synchronicity with some of the existing mechanisms. So in terms of some of the placemaking work that was done with the town centre projects, that could complement this. Obviously, we keep an eye on what we're doing. So we need dual funding. We couldn't use UK SBF to match fund a Welsh Government project, for example. The company would be quite careful of that. But no, I probably should have said, in terms of the transition year, we have actually put a proposal towards with Newtown Town Council on some of their high streets improvements, what have you. So that is actually featured in this transition year, Councillor, via Anti-Cymru.
Okay, good. Thank you, Dan. Nice to hear. And last one, if I may, Chair. Just a bit of information and clarity for me, and I may have got this wrong actually, Dan, but does the Smart Towns Wi-Fi project fit into this? Because that seems to have stalled badly in Newtown.
It was, yeah, that was a project we did fund under some of the SPF. And again, given the level of funding we had, we just unfortunately were unable. But there is, I understand it, projects in the pipeline to be looking at again. But this is the challenge we had with the reduced amount of money. We had to make some difficult decisions on which projects, or the panel, I should say, made some decisions. So we are looking at it again, Councillor, in terms of a new way forward. But it was an example of a project that actually was discontinued.
Okay,
I
could
think on that one, Councillor Peter and Daniel, I know something about this, but I can't quite remember what I know about it. But I know in my town council meeting this week, we're looking for a date to meet with somebody about Smart Town. So I'll look into that, Peter, and perhaps share that with you.
Yeah, yes, please. Just last comment from Chair. Yeah, just on that, it's in Newtown. We've got 4 out of 6 hubs that have been installed in buildings, but nobody sort of seems to know what's happening now. So
To link them up.
what would be nice is either to pick up that with you, or perhaps Dan, whether there's some briefing note that could be sent to the town council to just explain where the position is, please.
Yeah, okay.
Makes sense.
I know my officials do tell me that it is in, they're trying to sort it out and it's in hand. Was the, not that I'm reading off a message that's popped up on Teams, Councillor, but it's
No, that's great. No, thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Lovely. Thank you, Peter. Thank you. Councillor Chloe.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. And I think it's quite exciting looking at all these different things, the impact we can have with the money that's been provided. So, I mean, well done. It's obviously going to be a lot of work. So I think the points I've got really are just from my understanding, and to get a bit of a deck some smaller points, because generally the whole thing does look quite, really positive. So the first one really is around the criteria we use to identify which projects to fund. So, if you said for the business one, for example, you had lots and lots of applications, presumably there's then criteria against which they're assessed. And specifically, I'm wondering about whether that long-term impact, a bit like Councillor Peter's point, is included as a criteria. So rather than having that reliance on grant funding that you mentioned, it's something that it's a startup fund that then it will continue long-term. So
building resilience, not reliance.
Yeah.
Happy to answer that question, Councillor Misfield. And it's what I should have said actually. Part of this journey for these companies is that we do actually insist that if they're applying for some funding, they undertake support from Business Wales, for example. So they have that mentoring available, whether it's procurement, whether it's greener working, whether it's the workflow, how their HR, everything really. They're mandated to use that support if they're coming to us. So we have assurances then going forward that money we've spent is used wisely and those companies access the right support. Only yesterday we were going through the scoring matrix for the projects, because the window's only just shut. And I was really encouraged to see the team bringing forward some of the work around climate resilience, scoring heavily. That transition, is really key there. So, yeah, I think we certainly had several hundred applicants for that fund. So it just shows there is the demand there. But I'm sorry, Diane, I'm not sure you want to come in on that point. Sorry, Chair.
Diane, did you want to come in at that point?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think some of the projects that the partnership actually wanted to ensure were put in place was that just that problem, Councillor, where you give a pot of grant funding, don't you? And then when the grant funding ends, you know, they're looking for the next pot of grant funding. So specifically, one of the projects was around the arts and culture, where it was actually a sustainability fund. So it looked at the financial sustainability and working together as a collective and how they can support each other with ideas, funding, kind of sharing material and sharing visitors, etc., to how they can become more sustainable for the future. And I think the video that we didn't have time to play, but that really shows kind of for a lot of those organisations how they actually managed to keep going and have found a way to make themselves much more sustainable for the future and not so grant reliant. So really good question. Thank you.
No, that's great. Thank you. I have two further questions, Chair, if that's okay.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So my second one really is about whether there was, I know you talked about how the information was spread and shared with different communities across Powys, and you got some of the ones that, you know, got organisations that don't normally apply, but was there any targeted work to access communities that we tend to consider, you know, hard to reach or underrepresented minority groups, those with protected characteristics, to make sure that they had opportunities to apply as well, because often they get missed out in some of the things that we do as council?
Yeah, we certainly did council. We were Parvo, Powys Association of Voluntary Organisations. They were on hand with that work and helping us again outreach where appropriate. If I'm being honest, we could have spent the money 10 times over. Really, I think, you know, sad situation. We had to score in terms of outputs, but actually, you know, Parvo did a really good job for us in doing that, and some of that work has continued in terms of some of the outreach we're doing at the moment. I know we're funding, for example, school uniform funds for some of the schools, some of the communities, for example, we're working in that area. So yeah, there's some really powerful stuff, and help actually things like solar for some of our volunteer organisations, helping them with their energy bills. That's fallen under the recent scheme. So yeah, I wish we could do a lot more with what we had, but you know, Palo and Antica did a really good job with the outreach for us.
Okay, that's great, thanks. And then I think just looking forwards a bit about whether how the feedback from residents, applicants, delivery partners is being incorporated then when you're adjusting the programme for next time. You know, are you able to gather that to use it to design it in the future?
Yes, absolutely. You know, we're in that period at the moment with in fairness to the WLGA, we're lobbying hard to understand what our funds will be going forward and actually how we can utilise those appropriately. So I wish I could say today we've got a clear picture on what to expect, but the honest answer is it's still in the development stage.
Thanks. And just, I guess, so you've managed to get feedback from the communities and things that were impacted, and you're able to feed that in. You've got that sort of two-way mechanism, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. The dialogue is in their perpetuity now, post SPF funding, and some of those outputs will be recorded for a number of years yet. Really, yeah, it's the evolution of a scheme. You know, we'd gather evidence from what was done previously.
Lovely. Okay, lovely. Thank you, Councillor Chloe. Thank you, Daniel. Councillor Corinna.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yes, the last questions have visited some of the areas I wanted to go, because I was going to talk about arts funding. It isn't, I think it's put down as 687,000, which isn't huge in terms of the various organisations, because Arts Council Wales pulled funding to an awful lot of outfits. But I think the outfit I'm concerned with, the Y-side, is okay now. So Diane, for the moment, Diane is quite right. They've managed to find other ways of getting funding. So I assume that the slightly constrained approach there was so to push organisations to look elsewhere, perhaps. I don't know. Apart from that, I found the process of applying for shared prosperity funding very technocratic. It was too difficult for me for just a small pot of money for Knighton signage, just to improve a little thing in Knighton. And so I was very glad that Pavo did, I think, get 400,000 so they could distribute to outfits like mine. And I was finally going to ask about the difference between levelling up funding and shared prosperity funding. Is it a subset of levelling up funding?
Okay, I think there's three questions there, Councillor. The first one was in terms of the feasibility. You mentioned Y-side there. I should have said, sorry, in terms of the transition fund this year, part of our remit, the decision was made with the portfolio. Actually, we had a number of projects last year went for feasibility studies. Feasibility to concept was the next stage now. So we've had a number of those projects last year, YSI being one, who applied for feasibility funding, looking at the next stage of that and actually, okay, you've done a feasibility in a project, what happens now? So how that deliverable from that concept takes the next stage, that's within the transition year as we speak. So that is part of that. So it's an evolution of the previous SPF funding in taking that feasibility to concept has been supported, and that was an open call. So companies, previous receivers of SPF funding, were asked to apply to make their feasibility projects a reality. So that did take place. Dan, do you want to cover the levelling up? If I could bring Diane, please, Chair, just for the levelling up, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
So the levelling up was an overarching umbrella funding scheme that replaced European funds. The levelling up programme had two aspects. It had a capital programme, so you were allowed to put in a bid for levelling up in each MP constituency, and you could put in a bid for capital works up to 3 projects. So each local authority and MP constituency that were allowed to put that in, and you were also allowed to put in for 1 transport bid. Under that scheme, you also had a shared prosperity fund, which is a revenue fund, which then got allocated to each local authority direct from UK government to the local authority. So we were successful in our bids for levelling up capital funds for both of our MP constituencies and our transport bid. And I think we were one of the only authorities that managed to successfully bid for those. So we're really proud of that. So 3 projects in each area. And then obviously our Shared Prosperity Fund was then pulled together under the Mid Wales banner, but we got our own individual allocation.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Councillor Adrian.
Thank you. Dan, can I just ask, on one of your slides, there was mention of 113 new businesses.
Yes, that's correct. Yep, that's right.
Have you got examples of those, or is there somewhere we can view that? It's a very good start.
It is, yeah. No, I can share the report with you all. So those are a number of people, sole traders, for example, who are using some of the anti-Cymru support. Oh, House County Council requires a restart. Not now, you don't. So,
excellent timing. Rely on the IT.
So a number of those were sole traders who were actually looking to expand from the hubs that were funded via Anti-Cymru. So I can certainly follow this meeting, a list of those for you. And where they're operated from. So yes, that's not a problem. Hand on heart, I haven't got it in front of me. I've got too many screens on them, but I'm aware a number of those have since gone on to take on their own projects, for example, and their own retail premises. So some real success stories there. But I can share those with you certainly.
So are you saying it's mostly retail type companies?
No, it was everything. You know, gosh, I've certainly think that fencing contractors was one. I think there's some builders there. It was across the board really. Number of young farmers particularly benefited from that in terms of some kits getting to the next level. So it was really that at that foundational economy level really where we're looking to support those youngsters stay within the communities and actually have purchased the tools needed to become self-employed. So yeah, and there was again support things like Farming Connect. We were working with those to see what their companies were, who they were. So it's across the board.
Okay, that's good. Yeah.
There was, I'll be honest, everything from ice cream parlors to dog groomers. It was all sorts there. It was everything really.
Ice cream for dogs, even perhaps.
Well, yeah, I missed that one.
Can I just ask quickly, of the 9.1 million for the transition year, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
How much is that? How much of that has been allocated already?
Okay, we've fully allocated the amount.
You have, okay.
Yeah, it was, to be honest with you, we had to make some difficult decisions given the level of funding previously, and actually, you know, the scoring of that, how it was done with the portfolio holder and the team was very much focused on where is that able to continue some of the good work going forward. So what we didn't want to do is try and launch anything too onerous to deliver in the short period, because we had such a short period, short window to get that launched. But yeah, that's allocated.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Glynn.
Sorry, thank you very much for bringing me in, Chair. I just wanted to sort of answer a question that hasn't been asked, but I know that Councillor Gary was very, very keen to ask about what we knew about the replacement funding to come, and perhaps I can bring Diane in a bit to give a little bit more detail. But so far, we've had an announcement from the UK government on Pride in Place Impact Fund. Which the methodology for which it's been allocated by, it's determined by primarily the Welsh Index of Multiple Deprivation, which, you know, in my view, I don't think adequately accounts for lots of things that we see in Powys, particularly sort of inequity of provision or indeed rural poverty. And, you know, Dan said, obviously, this transitional year, we've had a total of approximately £9 million this year. And so far, all that's been announced is to the tune of 1.5 million. We are expecting other announcements. And I think, can I bring in Diane at this point just to cover that?
Okay, yeah, Diane.
Absolutely. So as part of the new UK government's methodology for distribution, the distribution I outlined before that the Levelling Up Fund went direct to local authorities. This time the funding is going via Welsh Government. So Welsh Government have had an allocation of 211 million. They've allocated some of that to the Pride in Place new programme, which we've got 1.5 million, as Councillor Preston outlined. But there's also going to be a local growth fund that's not been announced yet, but I think is going to be allocated via the corporate joint committee, so as a joint regional piece with ourselves and Ceredigion. We don't know the value of that fund yet, so remains to be allocated. And I think there is also some elements of the fund that Welsh Government are doing some high level kind of work themselves, and using some of the funds to deliver some of the elements that they feel will support areas of need in Wales. So we don't know any of that information yet. I think there's high level discussions, but nothing coming out that I could share with you today, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for that, Councillor Glynn. You preempted what I was going to round up with. But actually, I just want to take us back a little second, if I can, because one thing we didn't sort of talk about there was the councillor anti-poverty scheme. And I'm just wondering, have all councillors put in a scheme and have all those been accepted? And I am particularly wondering if there are any councillors or any schemes that haven't gone ahead, what's going to happen with that money, and will it be available in a pot, perhaps, for councillors who had more than one scheme to bid for?
Shall I come in there?
Yeah,
thank you, Councillor. Yeah, that's a good question. We are, as we speak, just currently evaluating where we are with that spend, and I believe there have been chasers sent to those councillors who've yet to allocate their funding. So, obviously, we're open to any suggestions should that arise. But I think, yeah.
So is there a date by which, you know, you can see here I'm ready to get my claws into some, so declaring an interest. And I'm sure many other councillors had more than one project for their areas.
As it stands, I'm aware of only one project, one outstanding councillor as we speak.
Oh, okay.
So,
oh, that is fantastic then. So everybody's put in at least a bid for the money. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's fantastic. That's great news. Okay, members, so we're going to have a sort of a roundup really now. This was a paper for information, so no recommendations as such, but I think it's only right that we make some observations on this. From what I've heard here, certainly it sounds like the projects have been very broad. There's been a whole range of subjects, and I'm really pleased to hear that a lot of those smaller organisations have been able to sort of apply for the money. A little bit concerned, but not surprised, that you make the comment that the process was over onerous. And I wonder if we've got any impact on making that smoother, the transition, both for the applicants and for the council in getting those approvals in the future. And I wonder what members, do you have any thoughts on that? So Councillor Bryan, Councillor Carl, any members really, do you have any thoughts on what we've heard?
No, I wish we'd had this a little bit sooner, because I still get a bit confused of all the different funds.
Yeah, that's, I think everybody does there. We're all with you, Councillor Bryan. There's lots of different pots, aren't there? Yeah. Councillor Chloe?
Just going to say, I thought it was good to see the use of partnerships for sharing the information and how broadly it was shared. I think that was really good to hear. And also that resilience building within the funding pot. I think that's really positive too.
Yeah, I think for me, that's the take-home phrase, isn't it? That we're hoping that this money is going to build resilience for the organisations, not reliance on funding. I'm sure we're all involved with organisations that are continually searching for their next pot of money. So I think that's a key phrase, isn't it? Councillor Jackie, do you like to come in there?
Yes, thank you. You've given us the opportunity to make some comments. So I hope you don't mind me making a couple of comments here. I mean, I thought this presentation was really, really useful. And what it highlighted to me as well is not just the fact that we are now in a position to support the economy in Powys through the Shared Prosperity Fund, but also how it links to the Levelling Up Fund. And I think that was made very clear by Diane this morning as well. And I think that's really helpful for members to understand that, because there are some tensions around the Levelling Up Fund, but it is all going to good causes. I also think that the Shared Prosperity Fund has been really good at reaching down into our communities. Something that I can't believe I'm saying this, but the EU funds were that didn't necessarily always reach down into our local communities. Although I don't think the Shared Prosperity Fund has gone anywhere near to actually give the same amount of economic development that the EU funds did do. And I think finally as well is taking this forward and looking at the amount of work and support that's been done in our communities around renewable energy and around the green economy as well. That's easily taken up through the Shared Prosperity Fund, because it is one of the criteria that we're looking at. And I know that that has made a difference in our local communities with local community energy groups, and has helped to move that agenda forward. Only little incremental steps, but those little incremental steps are the benchmark that we're all going forward for. So I hope you don't mind, Councillor Angela, me making those comments.
Lovely. Thank you, Councillor Jackie. Dan, I can see you've got your hand up, but I'd like to bring Councillor Carl in there, if that's okay, and then we'll come back to you for the final words on this, if that's okay. Councillor Carl.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies, I was late. I had a governor's meeting this morning as well, which clashed with this meeting. No, just what I can comment on was the last bit about our bids. I've put in a bid for an after-school club at Llandudno School. We've had to do a further business case going forward, so we're just sorting that out now. So just to let Dan know if there was any confusion there. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that, Councillor Carl, then brings me to raise that for you and actually for Councillor Corinna. If you were actually involved in a project personally, as opposed to being as your councillor ward, you may have to declare interest in that, just as so if you're involved with an organisation and have been involved in that application, I think it might be wise for you to make your declaration of interest, as Councillor Gary did at the start.
Apologies, Chair.
I didn't have to go that route, Angela. So
there we are. Just make sure we tick all the right boxes and we're operating within the rules. So that's that. So Dan, we'll come back to you then at the end.
Okay, thank you. It was just a comment on the back of Councillor Charlton's there about the structural funds, and you're right. Actually, we had to evolve very quickly to adapt to a world post EU funding. It was a challenge, and only last week we were made aware that actually some of the property development funds that we have traditionally struggled to access will now become available to us. But it just shows how much time it's taken for that to evolve and to become available to us. So Welsh Government did share with us actually around some of our work, which I'll come on to our next presentation, some of those avenues around new funding streams.
Okay, lovely, thank you. So our observations then, just for the minutes. What we've said here, we'd like a briefing note to town councillors to clarify. We're wondering, how the process in the future could be made less onerous, and I think you mentioned that particularly, Dan, didn't you? And if we could share a list of new businesses that have come out of the funding. I think Councillor Adrian was quite interested to find that. Are there any other observations members would like to have in the minutes? So I think I would just like to add that I was pleased by the breadth of different organisations that have been supported. And actually one thing I didn't mention earlier, but I was quite pleased. I think the app for work experience is probably quite exciting, because previously young people probably were limited by their parents or their parents' friends or their locality in gaining work experience. So an app maybe opens up all different ideas for them, doesn't it? And the work done to support our young people, I think, is really positive as well, because we know many of our young people are very capable and intelligent and articulate and are able to leave the county and go out to county for their education, etc. So we need to ensure that opportunities are there for those who want to stay. I think that's coming up next a little bit as well, isn't it? Okay, so if we got no more hands up and no more comments, and everybody's happy?
Chair,
happy?
sorry.
Yep, sorry, Peter.
No, that's right, Chair. Yeah, just building on your one on town councils as well, if I may. Could
yes,
we
please.
Minute and ask for an update on the Smart Towns project across the towns where that is.
Yeah, we're getting a thumbs up from Dan. Thank you, Dan. Yeah, we'll add that in then, Peter. Yeah, lovely.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Chair,
okay.
Apologies, Chair. Could I just ask for a show of hands from the committee to accept those observations then, please?
All happy? Yep.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you. There we are. Thank you. Oh, no, gone down. Thank you, members. Lovely. So we move on to the next item on our agenda, which is item 7 on my agenda, but I think we're item 9 now, really. But anyway, whatever it is, it's the Strategic Economy Framework. And I think we're back in your hands, Dan. You're presenting this to us.
Thank you. So that was
thank you very much.
Almost to say the start there really is in terms of reflecting what SPF has achieved with the funding we have. But I think today this essentially is I see this as a chance for us, for myself, Diana, and my colleagues who are listening in to really have a conversation with everyone here, and also working group in terms of our economic strategy going forward, and actually how we position Powys. And what I would like to stress is I think we do know some of the challenges we're facing here in Powys in terms of our aging population, in terms of the number of children, in terms of how we essentially want Powys to be viewed on the global stage. So we're quite parochial. I think I really appreciate comments today on how we seek to position Powys going forward. So without further ado, I will start my presentation, Chair, if you're content.
Yeah, please go ahead. Thank you.
So I'll just go to presentation mode. Okay, and I'll just go, excuse me a second while I do that.
Yeah, lovely. We can see that. Well, we can see your screen. We can. Oh, there we are. That's it.
Fab. Okay, great. Thank you. So, yeah. So thank you for your time today, councillors, and essentially what am I going to do today is set out a conversation piece essentially in terms of where we see powers towards 2040 and a regenerative future where people and nature thrive together. So it'll cover a significant area of topics, but obviously fundamentally we need to understand our role in providing food security, providing a safe environment, and a fairer and a greener world. So without further ado, I'll make a start. So we have a vision for powers essentially, and again we've been working with our partners on this, really trying to understand. Oh, sorry, is the next slide showing as well?
It is, yes. I was just going to say that. Thank you, Andrea.
How shall I what have I done here now? So sorry for a second. If I stop sharing for 1 second, I'll put this into sorry, if I just put this back into presentation mode here. Why is it doing that now? It wasn't doing it earlier. Sorry, everybody.
And just say thank you, Gary. Nice to see you back in the room. Just welcome back.
I don't know why it's doing the next slide. Does anyone display?
I don't think it really matters, does it?
Okay, fine. Okay, if everyone's okay, then I'll do that. So it's sorry everybody for that. That's if I go back to share screen again. Okay, share that, and I'll go on to. I don't know why it's doing that for me.
Right, we've got the full slide pack at the side now.
Okay, sorry.
Any IT?
Okay.
There we are.
There
we are. We've just got the one slide and the next slide. That's fine.
Okay. Well, okay. So you know, we're looking today to have a discussion on the Powers 2040 plus and the vision where we will deliver powers where the economy is in step with our biggest asset, our land. So we're 25% of Wales' land mass. You know, we really need to focus upon that, I think, as part of our future economic strategy and our food production, our tackling climate change, our natural assets, and essentially our people. Our natural capital is our strongest point. So it's where our communities thrive in harmony with nature and future generations inherit a secure, hopeful and abundant future. Okay, so some of the key findings we're really looking at is by 2040, Powys will be judged not only on its financial growth, but also on the health of its rivers, forests and farmland. Community resilience, the resilience of our communities and the opportunities seized by young people are crucial measures of success. How can we ensure that our communities are resilient? Those young people are remaining in our communities and actually they want to stay, to live here, learn and have their own families in time. And the pride of the contribution, there's a strong emphasis on the pride in living in a county that gives more than it takes. As I was saying, you know, our land is our biggest asset in terms of its food production, in terms of its tackling climate change, and offering that resilience to the whole of the country. So the team is essentially ready to act as the engine of transformation, focusing upon policy direction, embedding climate and economy, and the welfare of our communities at the core of decision making. Investment mobilization, securing both external and internal funding streams, and partnership leading, convening communities, businesses and government agencies to work together, and program delivery, ensuring that initiatives move from vision to reality. So again, this is very high level, but actually what does that mean in reality? And some of the work we're doing is clearly heading towards that, but these are the clear fundamental building blocks for that process to start. So the 5 critical areas of focus that we're looking to focus on as a team are the energy transition. So local renewable projects, ownership models and grid innovation. Only yesterday at the Climate and Nature Steering Group with some presentations around how Llanidloes, for example, is looking to develop as a virtual hub with the whole community in its entirety to actually manage the energy needs of that community using renewable energy, accessing the grid when it needs to, and actually storing energy as well. So they become essentially a micro power plant. And the feasibility of that is underway with some support from Welsh Government. Again, the green growth, SME support, inward investment and circular economy enterprises. I touched upon it earlier in terms of those SMEs. Those 95% of our economy, those small companies, those one-man bands, those single trading bodies, they're our economic backbone. We really must make sure that they're in a position to thrive and access these new opportunities coming forward. Visitor economy, sustainable tourism and cultural growth. Can't emphasize enough how powerful the Powys brand could be on the global stage. Just look at some of the events that take place here, the Royal Welsh, Hay Festival, Green Man, some significant motorsport recently. Fantastic opportunities to really showcase what Powys can offer and actually attract those younger people who come here to visit, to actually come and stay and work and seek employment in our communities. And place planning, shaping our market towns and rural settlements into resilient hubs, how we can use online tools to develop those place plans. And actually, so often we lack the feedback from elements of our community. We have existing mechanisms, but sometimes those younger voices aren't heard. How can we use our place planning using smarter technology? And of course, climate resilience, protecting communities. We're all aware the flood, the irony was we had the driest summer, September, then we're rescuing people from cars outside Welshpool. That there's real need for climate resilience and restoring nature to withstand extreme weather events. You chat to some of the older community members, rivers used to rise slowly, rivers used to drop slowly. That's not happening anymore. I put this slide here about the visionary path. Okay, it doesn't sound very high level, but actually nature as economy, we need to start thinking about our natural capital as a driver for economic growth. And nature recovery, biodiversity, it has a value. It's got a capital value what we can use to bring that investment in. So establish an enabling environmental investment platform to support food producers and landowners. So essentially, this work is being explored currently in terms of how we can get that private sector funding into our economy. Right now, if I was to go and do some tree planting or some habitat restoration or some flood mitigation or some food diversification, it needs a grant. Grant money is becoming tighter. We need to explore how we can use private sector funding to address that. And regenerative land-based economies, position Powys as a national pilot for regenerative land-based economies, showcasing sustainable practices and innovative approaches to land management. Again, we've got the land, we've got the skills, we've got the people there who can make that a reality. And energies of freedom. We talk about energy poverty. We're in a position where we've got a huge capacity to produce energy. And so developing a comprehensive Powys energy strategy that focuses on scaling community-owned renewable generation. As I mentioned, Clint Voice there now, we're currently undertaking that as a feasibility project. If that's successful, that will then be an investable opportunity that could be rolled out across the county. And smart grid, develop a smart rural grid that aligns with Welsh and UK ambitions. We're all aware what's some of the planning applications we're due to receive very shortly. What does that mean for us and how we can maximize those benefits? And communities as anchors, placemaking. We really must sort of embed those place plans. As I was saying, quite often people feel separated from what a place plan means. How do they feed into it? We need to make sure that our planning colleagues and our teams understand what the place planning means in terms of those future communities' needs, how we can attract those young people to come here to live, to work and thrive, and aligning those housing, transport, and digital infrastructure needs with that resilient growth. Of course, has to be evidence-based, and that's absolutely key to that. And the evolution of placemaking plans is part of that. Okay, so the Green Growth Accelerator Programme. So we're keen here. We're currently testing, as I mentioned in the previous slides, we've got the smart SBF funding for the transition year. Just trying to understand really those companies, how they perceive green growth and how we can use that to foster innovation. Quite often, I think there was a pretty dramatic headline yesterday. I think, Chair, you mentioned about, I think some of our children or grandchildren, is the case, will be employed in jobs that we don't even know what they are yet. There's such a fast pace of what green growth essentially is. And the retrofit supply chain, of course, where we need to transition to net zero in our estate, promoting those skills, those energy opportunities in building practices. And then rural innovation testbed. Market Powers is a rural innovation testbed, both nationally and internationally, attracting investment and showcasing innovative solutions. And we're seeing that currently in the Severn Valley with the Severn Valley Water Management Scheme, for example, attracting some real interest globally. Okay, a place of joy and belonging. Visitor economy, as I mentioned, we've got so much to offer the global community in terms of the events that we can host here, in terms of the cultural, the sporting, the agricultural. There's a vast amount we can do there. And it's really driving that visitor economy and focusing on positioning us globally with that, and actually broadcasting what we do. I think we're not good enough at shouting what we can achieve and what we can promote globally, and promote Powys and position it as the capital events of Wales. And again, there's a real need for a brand, I think, around sustainable tourism and cultural growth. I think we're quite often, there's so much more we could be doing on that, and I'm looking forward to working on that going forward. So yeah, as I mentioned, resilience and security, adaptive technologies and climate readiness. We've all seen recently some of the headlines around the security issues and resilience to some of the threats that we face globally, and actually how can Powys work on that, not only from the climate resilience, but also working with our companies to strengthen their resilience too, and working with our UK and Welsh Government partners for that community protection. So, yeah, you know, I've given some examples there, been very much thought-provoking, really, but I want to give you a quick example of some of the real work we are actually doing on the ground to do this. And you know, I'm pleased to say that Mid Wales Growth Deal is accelerating now at pace, and we're taking forward the Cymru Tech Park, a landmark hub for advanced manufacturing, innovation, and future-ready skills, strategically located in Mid Wales Engineering Corridor. So we're currently working very hard behind the scenes to deliver Cymru Tech Park in Newtown, an advanced manufacturing centre with precision engineering, prototyping, and R&D, with green skills, accessible and smart commercial spaces. So again, working with the industry, we had an event just recently. I'll just go to the next slide, which would cover that. So, you know, we had over 8. This is the Cymru Tech Park. This is just an example of one project we're working on, what the aspirations are for this project, should we land it here in Newtown. So 300 and 400 daily workers, apprentices and students, between 750k to 1.1 million new annual spend in retail hospitality services, 50 to 60,000 extra town centre visitors, and retains that young talent, boosts economy and fills vacant units. So we know that there's a real concern around some of our young leavers going away to leave. If we can build something here in Powys that actually makes it attractive to them to want to stay, to live and grow and continue to support our communities, it's in our gift to do it. And again, it's that business competence connectivity. You know, quite often businesses feel they're out on a limb, potentially compared to the West Midlands in England. We can use that, attract that investment and strengthen those supply chains, and really work to improve Newtown's retail core. And to date, we've had over 80 businesses engaged with us, with a strong demand confirmed. So that was an example. So alone, that project would draw down 23.9 million via the Mid Wales Growth Deal, should we succeed in delivering it. So just for reference, the business case milestone. So the outline business case is October, which is on track. The economic commercial case in December 2025, with a final outline April 2026. So yeah, the land purchase, we're just going through that as we speak to launch the project. Okay, so if we're just reflecting back for a second in terms of the legacy goals. So, you know, these are some headlines really that we need to grapple with as a local authority, and actually, where do we position ourselves in 2040, which isn't a million miles away, let's be honest. So energy positive, giving back more clean power than taken, climate resilient to extreme weather events and nature risks. Let's try and reverse that biodiversity decline with clean, healthy rivers, for example, and people-focused equality, fair opportunities and vibrant communities, visitor-ready, having a strong pipeline of events to showcase the jobs available here, the culture and our heritage. It really is key to get those young people visiting and hopefully staying and contributing here in our community. And globally inspiring, you know, we should be positioning Powys on the global stage, 100%. We've got so much to offer. So we have established a 10-year roadmap as a draft for consideration today. So we are looking to establish a green growth fund with the council's approval, and begin community renewable projects, as I shared that example earlier in Llanidloes, and I can share the slides on that for you so you can understand that. Adopted a visitor economy master plan, and embed place planning frameworks in all localities, and also the resilient framework. And of course, this will help that tackling poverty programme. So phase 2, again, 28 to 2030, retrofit of housing stock, grow renewable energy beyond county demand, and deliver eco-tourism corridors and expand branding. Just an example of that, we're working closely with the Marches Partnership on the Offers Dyke offer. How can we expand that to include more of our communities rather than people simply marching up and down it? Let's look at those loops where we can bring those people off Offers Dyke into our communities to experience and spend more. And establish local resilience hubs, offer those people those tools where appropriate. And again, I was saying that obviously achieve net zero across council operations, secure majority household participation in energy cooperatives, and regenerative farming. You know, farming is the backbone. Food production, food security is absolutely critical to this, and we will never lose sight of that with this work. It's fundamental. Yeah, as I was saying about the visitor economy, and the Powys branded as a global rural innovation leader. I think we've really got that opportunity here in Powys. As I was saying about exporting clean energy, eliminate fuel poverty with net zero housing, and showcase Powys as a global model of resilience and prosperity, and reverse that rural youth out migration with opportunities and belonging. So we are liaising, we are working currently as part of the Cymru Tech project in Newtown, engaging with those youngsters now, those 11 to 16-year-olds. What would they want to see Powys deliver for them to remain, to live and thrive in our communities? So, you know, I say a call to Carol, actually it's a call to everyone, if I'm honest, really. It's we need your leadership and to embed climate and economy in all of our council portfolios, unlock the funding and partnership needed for delivery, and champion Powys as Wales's model of rural regeneration. Yeah, we're ready for the challenge. You know, I'm looking forward to it. But actually, I think we need to get in that mindset of let's really bang that drum and just show everyone what we can achieve here in Powys. So thank you very much. I'll stop showing my slides.
Thank you, Dan. That's really, really interesting and thought-provoking. I'm sure we're going to have lots of questions, but I'm just going to start one. You talked we. Several times you mentioned we. I'm taking that to be the council. So can you explain to us who's been involved to date in putting this together where we are so far?
Yeah, thank you, Joe. So essentially, this has been brought together by the economy team working in step with members of SLT, just to really just to try and capture that vision, as it were, what we want to present today on get that conversation going. So I can see that Diane's got a hand in there. Diane wants to.
Yeah, Diane, come on in.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's obviously this is based on a lot of research and evidence that we've conducted across the piece, either ourselves or through Growing Mid Wales, and as we take the lead jointly on economic development. So there have been studies on tourism, on energy, on business. So and there was a regional economic framework as well for Wales that talks about the Mid Wales region. So it's trying to build on what we already have. So we already have an economic strategy under Mid Wales, and that's trying to take it down on this vision in terms of maybe taking it a bit longer in terms of vision, but also taking it a bit more crucially down to Powys and what our areas of focus are based on the Cabinet's directions with the corporate strategic equality plan, but we also shared an earlier version of the strategy with all members in an economic development member development day as well. But we continue to have that ongoing dialogue with all of our partners across all different sectors of economic growth. Thanks.
Lovely. Thank you very much. And Dan, I was interested by your strapline, Powys, the events capital of Wales. Have you been poaching from Raider, whose strapline is the outdoors capital of Wales?
Yeah, that was a quick win, Chair. But no, in terms of events, there is, as Diane quite rightly, there's evidence behind this. This isn't just plucked from the air, And in terms of the licensing for events, we're in the top, I think, top 3 or 4 local authorities in Wales. We hold so many events here in Powys. We just don't really bang that drum enough about what we do, and it's a real chance to showcase that, just how a vibrant events destination we are.
Absolutely, totally. Right, we've got some questions. So Councillor Peter first.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, and yeah, thank you for that presentation, Dan. I know this is all in its early stages, so I guess there's some sort of comments and observations from me at this stage, really. I think it would be hard to disagree with the underlying sentiments, but I do also think we need some context around it in terms of the fact that not only we as a country, but we as a county are really a minute part of the global problem. But yes, I do agree we must do our bit, but I always think we should consider that under 3 headings for me, really, which is the cost of the change, the pace of the change, and the balance of the change. So I guess with those sort of 3 headlines in mind, my comments were, I see all the bits again going forwards. I don't see anything about what are the potential economic costs of doing this. So, for example, would food and energy cost more? If it does, that seems contradictory to the message that this will help to fight poverty. In the slides, it mentions internal/external funding, and I'd just like to understand what that means, especially the internal funding. And obviously, the obvious question, if no funding's available, then what happens to this? I'm always keen to see how it links with other policy areas. So I think, as we've touched upon there, the visitor economy, the car parking, the tourist levy, because on the one hand, it always seems contradictory to me that we're trying to attract more visitors, obviously, but then we push up car parking. We've looked to impose, or will be discussing imposing, a tourist levy. It also then seems, I like the idea of positioning Powys as the events capital of Wales, but again, how would we offset the carbon footprint of people travelling to these events all over Powys? So again, just seems a slight contradiction. And final 2, if I may, Chair, is what happens to any non-green SMEs? Will they be abandoned? And how will we bring them into this? And finally, how would we export this clean energy? Will this mean more pylons across the landscape? And I think that's it. Thank you, Chair.
There we are. Very much a focus on the energy side of it there, and the green Powys. So Dan, do you want to come back with some answers on that?
Okay, thanks. Yeah, there's a number of points there, Councillor and Chair. Thank you for those, and we'll certainly take those away, and we'll have some responses prepared. What I will just touch upon one of them. You mentioned funding there. Obviously, our aspiration as an economy team is that I think previously we mentioned about the cyclical nature of grants, what have you. Really, that's something we really want to try and break. So we're trying to position Powys using green growth. Actually, what's our capacity for revenue generation within that sphere as a local authority? Have we been ambitious enough around our investment opportunities? Have we actually looked at how the private sector is evolving with those opportunities for investment? Have we considered the full suite of options within our control? I'm not sure if we have. So we do need to go away and do that work, and that's being undertaken as we speak. But yeah, there's a number of comments, and they're all valid points. But I think, Chair, if it's okay, if we take those away and I come back and answer them, I'll do that.
Yep, that's fine. Pete, you put your hand back up. Did you want to come back there, or?
Yeah, just two, if I may, Chair. Yeah, just thank you very much, Dan, and that's fine, because I say I know it's early stages, and sprung a few of those questions on you today as I wasn't in the pre-meet yesterday, so apologies for that. And I guess just the other one I wouldn't mind teasing out around the internal funding answer, Dan, is whether that would mean that we may consider increases to council tax rather than the other revenue streams you're alluding to there.
Okay, yeah, no, noted. Thank you. I'll take that and it'll be part of the response.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor Chloe.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Dan. I suppose I just want to start by saying I think this is really exciting. I love a vision. I think you can't see where you're going if you haven't got this sort of aspirational vision, and I think this really does a lot of that. Gives us a really exciting thing to aim for. Yeah, that's great. I like that a lot. One thing I did wonder whether we talk a lot about resilient communities and secure communities, but we don't talk about sort of joy and belonging until we're talking about visitors. And I wonder whether actually we want to be making Powys a great place to live, where our communities are, happy and content, and we can measure that life satisfaction that people have. There are obviously measures to. It sounds really silly to talk about happiness, but there are measures. There's a World Happiness Report, and we can look at how happy communities are and things. And I think it might be great to have that as a vision, that people are happy and they love living here and they want to come and move to Powys because it is a great place to live. So that's one thing. That's my main thing really I wanted to bring up. The only other question, I guess, in the 10-year roadmap, really good to see a roadmap, nice to see how this might pan out over the next 10 years and to have an idea of what this could look like in action. Lots of stuff on green economy and tourism things. I didn't see too much about what we're doing about supporting our communities, whether that's to become resilient or happy or vibrant, whatever we're looking for on that one. And then the last one is just about what sort of, kind of related to what Pete said, maybe about what sort of tangible difference is this going to make sort of to you and your team having this vision in place? Like, what will it change in terms of your activities?
Oh, a lot of questions in there,
Yes,
Chloe. So
yes.
that's interesting, actually, because on page 21, 2.1, it does say our communities thrive in harmony. So I suppose what you're asking is for an extension of that. What does that actually mean? And interestingly, I was reading the other day, sorry, Dan, but I was reading the other day, Bhutan judges its GDPR on happiness. Now, what that means for people in reality in their daily lives, it's quite a closed country, isn't it? But anyway, but that's interesting. So Dan, over to you.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I think this is the whole purpose today, really, was to get those sort of conversations going. Actually, we do tie ourselves up in knots quite often reporting on traditional outputs. But actually, yeah, I fully agree, Councillor Macefield, that sense of well-being, if we are facing fundamental challenges around our population, our working age, right across the board, and actually making Powys somewhere where young people can thrive is absolutely key. And I think, again, comments of the emphasis of the tourism economy, you're right, really. I guess we think of events as being a way of showcasing what Powys has to offer, whether that's a rally or a music concert or a local agricultural show. It's part of that, but we mustn't forget those people who are already here, and if our rural communities are feeling battered because of rates return for their work, whether it's food production, we've got to really try and support that as well, because it's all well trying to attract, but if we're not looking after who's already here, then we're missing a trick, really. So by
100%, absolutely.
by the whole purpose of green growth is actually fundamentally is offering those existing members of our communities economic opportunities, and my team and I are really looking how we can use that private sector to contribute towards that, because there just simply isn't the money. The SPF funds are fantastic, but we can't rely upon that. We need to really drive that economic growth. But no, I love the idea of a happiness. As a grumpy middle-aged old man, I think that's start with me. But it was that was excellent. Thank you. And we will report back on all comments, obviously.
Oh, thank you, Dan. Just just on that last one, the tangible difference is to make having this vision in place when you're delivering as a team. Some of these things you're obviously doing already. I just wondered, like, having this vision, what sort of difference is it going to make to your?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think it's fair to say the team is evolving. We now have a natural capital project officer in place to actually work through what does this means in reality and produce that. Well, there's papers going to CLT as we speak on what does green growth actually mean and how this investment platform would work in reality. And the previous governance session we had on the Severn Valley Water Management Scheme, for example, is actually how that flood mitigation, which is actually fundamental to our security. The modelling for rainfall in mid Wales is worrying given climate change. How that community resilience can become an economic opportunity. So my team is, my team, Powers, the economy team, we're looking to evolve and adapt as appropriate, really, and really try and move away from traditional grant in, grant out. Whilst that's still fundamental, we need to be bolder in exploring potential economic opportunities.
Yeah, I think that the tourism visitor economy is obviously very, very important to Powys, but we do have to balance that. I read somewhere, page 37, 50 to 60,000 extra town visits per year. We have to remember that requires infrastructure. Our roads are narrow. As somebody trying to go about their everyday business with camper van city happening in my ward, it can make life difficult for local people, but you need the toilets, you need the parking facilities. But of course, we also need the cafes, etc., to service them, and that brings local jobs for local people. So it is balancing those two, isn't it? But of course, those visitors can be local people as well, can't they? So that we're not just attracting tourists into our town, we're attracting the surrounding locality to shop, to stay, to visit its local town. So those are the challenges. So I think it's spot on there, Chloe, with sort of saying we have to keep the lifestyle, the everyday life of our residents in harmony with everything that we're doing. Right, Corinna.
Thanks very much. I want to talk about the visitor economy as well. It's really interesting that you're talking about events, but how will that money trickle down to Knighton, So say I wanted to do a little archaeology festival in Knighton around the Offers Dyke Centre. How will, as Angela's just said, the infrastructure's not great. How will that improve our standing here? So I wanted to mention that. I also wanted to talk about the Llanidloes model, because I believe you say that by 2033, you're thinking that there's going to be a majority sharing of assets, community assets of solar panels, say, and batteries. Could you please expand on that? Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, Jay, should I come back?
Yeah, please do. Please,
okay,
Daniel. Yeah.
Thank you. So I'll touch upon the energy element first, and thanks to you, Councillor Corinne. You heard the presentation yesterday from the Bright Young Things, the Harvest project. They're looking in terms of how actually we can create these mini power plants within our communities. So that feasibilities work is underway at the moment, and I'm aware there is private sector interest in that as well, and how that can be supported and actually deliver benefits to our communities. So the aspiration is, if that pilot works in Llanidloes, we would look to then roll that out accordingly with that private sector support. So the local action energy plan is a document that we use as a sort of the bedrock essentially for understanding those local energy needs, and we are exploring more and more around what can we as a local authority do to produce energy, to store energy, and actually feed into our communities as well. So certainly positioning each of our areas as sort of micro power plants essentially is part of that. But it is early days. If this pilot does work, then essentially we would lobby Welsh Government to support that more.
Thanks. Thanks very much. It sort of means that you don't have to build another nuclear power station or whatever. I mean, not that we're
No, that's right.
Yeah.
It's energy sharing within a community.
Yeah.
So you know, obviously pragmatic, there'll be times in the winter when we'll need purchase energy in, but actually if there's in the middle of summer, then that community is exporting energy. That could help fill the coffers in preparation then to reduce those energy bills for that community. So it's a really exciting model, and again, it's on the legacy of the local action energy plan that's got us to this point. That's given the evidence to the Welsh Government to fund this project. So yeah.
And less pylons too, would you say?
Well, I'll come back on that comment when I follow up, but you know,
Thank you.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, Councillor Gary.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Daniel, for the presentation. Very similar to Chloe, really like the ambition. A lot of it chimes with my own sort of personal interests and definitely interests across from Powys, I'm sure. I guess probably a couple of questions. It's ambitious, which I really like. I can see the ideas behind the vision, and I can see how we could possibly get there. But one thing worries me is current capacity within your team is pretty small, and this is a really ambitious plan for a pretty small team within the authority. So perhaps just a question around, I guess some of it needs an action plan behind it, and I'm pleased to see those words in there that keen to deliver action behind such a strategy. This is quite high level, isn't it? So we'll want to see and quiz and support the strategy behind such an aspiration. But yeah, perhaps just alleviate some of my fears around your team's capacities to be able to move forward and begin to deliver on this, please, first.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Preston, do you want to come in on this point in terms of the team per se?
Yeah, well, I think it is fair to say that we have limited resources as an authority, and it is about trying to be more strategic in I suppose what we are using our energies on, and I suppose looking quite innovatively as to how we can leverage other pots of money. So, for instance, that Llanidloes example that Daniel mentioned is leveraging money both from the private sector and from Mid Wales Growth Deal. So, I think it is really about how we're really ingenuitive about looking at different pots of money and looking outside of our own council's core resource, I suppose.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Yeah, just a second that really. It's exactly that, Councillor Machino. We are having to work that much smarter as a local authority, and there's the environmental network knowledge. That they've got an event next week in Welshpool looking at funding for natural capital. So it is what I must stress is, you know, that we've seen so much sort of snake oil over the years with carbon trading, whatever you really, and we've got to go into this with our eyes wide open and understand what those private sector opportunities really are. But obviously, with fundamentally the beauty of being a local authority, we have the governance in place that we can actually do that due diligence and ensure those funds that we do seek to aid the work from the resource perspective are you know the correct funders.
Great, thank you. Okay, and I'm sure we'll be keen to try and help support things as they develop. My second point was around there's a good strong focus in here around that skills building stuff, that retention of our youngsters particularly, which is great and really welcome. And I think Mid Wales particularly has a really good history in manufacturing and very high level technology and stuff. So I can absolutely see the correlation there. We know there's been loads of work with the sort of skills development teams across the authority in the private sector. That's brilliant. But I guess my point to just raise is around a lot of Powys is deeply rural as well, and our rural economy does need that mixture. So yeah, advanced manufacturing, brilliant, all of that. But as you move away from some of those towns and those cluster sort of regions around that, you look at tourism and you look at agriculture and things like that. So obviously very welcoming of the potential strategy around sustainable tourism events and things like that, because I think that is a real opportunity that we have across the whole area in Mid Wales, and we can compete on a global stage and do around that. But I guess yeah, as a rural councillor, many would say food and farming and agriculture and forestry are backbones of our communities as well. And I'm aware that there's quite a number of institutions out there sort of seeking money to support skills and development around that as well. So it was perhaps just a question around how you are ensuring that we're joining up the dots. We're not competing with money. I'm very aware of people like the Wildlife Trust seeking very large scale interventions around water management and things like that in our communities. And not that we would want to stop that happening, but if we've got our own ambitions around it, we have to work out how we either support them to do it or how we collaborate and work together. So yeah, just a bit around cooperation, collaboration, and making sure we're not putting other sectors at risk with a more singular focus, please.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head really in terms of what we're looking to do here is actually synchronise all this effort that's going in from your NGOs, for example, in our rural communities and our farming organisations. The aspiration as Green Growth is to offer a governed, clear model where they can partner with us, as an example, to access that funding for that work, offering security, and that is private sector finance then, not the continual hunt for grants, which is a real drain of resources and very difficult. So by developing the investment platform, the aspiration is that would then collate all those different needs from those organizations to help secure food security and food production in our rural areas, but provide them with the security to continue the good work they're doing. So we're offering a mechanism, a governed mechanism that offers the scalability to those investors that they want, because they won't simply come in for 25 acres here or there, but they need the scalability of it, and that's what we can offer with Green Growth.
Thank you. And perhaps if I may, just on the skills sort of sharing of that skills support, just to sort of confirm really that we're able still to support some of those other models of skills building as well.
Yeah, I think, Diane, do you want to come in here?
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Mitchell, for your question. I think the advanced manufacturing is just one aspiration, and I think we've got lots of skills opportunities in lots of different areas, whether that's farming or green energy or ICT. I think we need to kind of maximise all growth opportunities, and some of the studies that we conducted under Grow Mid Wales looked at key sectors that we could look to develop, such as the food sector and all of those. And we are working with lots of different projects in lots of different areas that could have exciting elements to bring forward. It's just that they're all kind of in the long grass at the moment, but we're working really hard to bring those forward. So hopefully that the strategic ambition sets kind of where we need to focus first, but I think we can bring more and more online as we grow.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jackie, you've got your hand up. You want to come in as portfolio holder?
Yes, if that's okay, Chair. It's really in response to some of the questions that have already been answered. Specifically, Councillor Chloe and Councillor Gary have asked around resourcing, and actually is the team able to resource this and to cover this strategic approach that we have here. I think I wanted to come in really and say that on the last slide, it says that the Cabinet have been tasked with embedding the climate and then economy into all council portfolios, and I think that's something that we have been doing since I've been working alongside Dan and Diane, looking at the green economy and what we can do here, and how we can the potential that's available and how we can actually take that forward. We've worked really, I think, over the last 2.5 years to actually sorry, we have worked over the last 2.5 years to actually find ways of bringing those things together. And I think the fact that we've got an economy and climate directorate actually proves that. And I think this strategic approach that we have here now brings together all of those things. And I know Councillor Angela was asking who the we are. And I think my response to that is the we is all of us. And we have all been working towards this in different ways. But this is the culmination of all those conversations that have been undertaken over the last 2.5 years and bringing them together under one strategic plan to look at the green economy and our strategic approach to what we want Powys to look like in the future. And I think that's really, really that has come through in the presentation that you've done here today. We've also got our own climate and emergency annual plan, which is going to have a route map with it as well, which I think will underpin this really well. And sitting here this morning, I'm thinking of changing that annual plan from the climate and nature emergency to the climate and nature economy, and seeing how we can actually then align those things up, which again, I think comes back to the responsibility that we have as a cabinet to actually see the economy and the climate through all of our council portfolios. It's shared across the whole lot. So it's really sort of chairs to come back in response to Councillor Chloe and Councillor Gary on how they think we might be able to resource this and take this forward. And my response to that is it's all of our responsibilities to do that. It's not just Dan and his team. Thanks.
I think you're on mute, Chair, I think.
Thank you. Sorry. Yeah, this is a very strategic document, but of course it underpins that direction for our everyday work within the council, doesn't it? And you know, we've got to be mindful of how in the future we get our children to school, we get care workers to support the people they're looking after, how we go about, I've mentioned before myself, going about my daily business as our roads get busier and we've got narrower roads, how our highways can adapt to making sure our potholes, and Brian is nodding there, our ditches, etc., is something Brian brings up all the time. So all of these things are going to be impacted, aren't they, by the climate, but also the economy, because one thing we're always hearing as councillors is we don't have the funds to do something. So I guess this is about how we drive all of those things forward so that we can continue to do our daily business, but using, I suppose, modern technologies, new ideas, new structures. So yeah, I find this really fascinating and my head is trying to work where we go next. So I'm going to bring Councillor Pete in because you're going to probably take us left field again, Pete.
I will try my best not to, Chair, because
please
a
do.
lot of what's been said does actually fit under my 3 headings of cost, pace and balance, but I'll try not to. No, I just had two last observations, if I may. One was just following on a little bit there from what yourself has said and Councillor Jackie, and it was just a comment, I think, on one of the last slides that sort of says our call to Cabinet. I think it's headed up, and I understand your comment about it being strategic, but yeah, you know, we do get a message of we're all in it together from our leader. So I think it would be nice somewhere, perhaps in future presentations, to just make sure we include all councillors, as we are all in it together. We do all have a voice in this, and this sort of thing really should be a team effort. I'm sure it wasn't meant to mean anything else, but it would be just nice to have something there to reinforce that. And just the final point I had, there is a slide, I think, called Communities as Anchors, and it mentions place planning. So it was just another question for Dan in terms of how will that tie in with some town councils that already have embedded place plans.
Okay, good.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Yeah, that's a good point in terms of place plans, and we are actually looking to how we evolve the place planning work. We've been considering some case studies elsewhere in the UK and how those place plans have delivered greater feedback for councils and officials on that. For example, online portals, the use of social media, the use of alternative technology. And I appreciate that, you know, there's still a need for the traditional mechanism. It's actually critical we keep to do that. But certainly we have seen success with where a live online portal, as it were, where those community members were able to feed in thoughts, suggestions that then are factored into that place plan developing. So yes, that is something we're actively exploring as we speak.
Okay, Councillor Pete. Yep. Okay, Councillor Carl.
Thank you, Chair. Dan, I was just wondering if you could expand a little bit on the project in Llanidloes there. Councillor Glynn did mention that there was a private enterprise coming in as well as public funding. I just wondered how that's being monitored and how the generation of the power is being monitored and what success looks like from that project. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lewis. Yeah, as I was saying, there's a pilot under the WSRID scheme, which is a Welsh Government funded project, which I'm afraid I can't remember the acronym off the top of my head, but essentially it was looking how Llanidloes could act as a model for smart local generation, storage, and then exporting when appropriate. So in terms of the private sector, there was an 7Y Energy Agency are actually partners on that, and they have access to funding from some of the energy companies. So those energy companies are part of that model, and the governance of that then is delivered by the regional energy group, with reporting back to Welsh Government. So it's all within the framework of the funding, so offering that governance to us there. So there's no like you said, the last thing we'll do is a monopoly to form of that model as something being adopted and then owned without alternative partners delivering. So the private sector funding there currently is the money used for the 7Y Energy Agency to do the planning and do the monitoring of that. So it's that's where that factors in.
Just coming back on that, Chair. So if you're generating power, are you looking at rooftops on houses, or you've got an allocation of land to have a solar farm, or what?
It's currently rooftop solar is the aspiration there. They are considering other options around that as well, but its current format, as I understand it, and I'm happy to share the slides after Councillor, so you can see the presentation that was given yesterday at the Climate Nature Steering Group on that. So that's in the public domain, so we're happy to share those with you.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So there's been quite a lot of chat now about the community and local residents, and Pete there quite rightly said to keep the dialogue open with all councillors. Is there a forum for town and community councillors to be feeding into this? Because if we want to make our localities, our communities important and happy places to live, then they're best placed to sort of support us in that role, really. Diane.
Thank you, Chair, for your comment. I think this really does link in, doesn't it, to sustainable powers?
Yes.
And as you know, we have ongoing discussions with town and community councils twice a year, and I think this would be a really good presentation and discussion at those events to make sure that they get the chance to feed in and understand the and help kind of shape that ambition for us for the future.
Okay, lovely, that's good. So, members, any more questions, queries, comments? Okay, so what about some recommendations then, members? We want to make sure that our views are carried forward. We want to see this. I think it's been taken in a positive light. It is very strategic, as we've said, but I think it's quite exciting. I think were Chloe's words, and I would support that. So some recommendations, panel. So what we've got down here. So we want some clarity around how rural aspects will be considered, some clarity around resources to facilitate the plan and how implementation will be secured and managed, and then some clarity around communities, how they can be included and not just the tourists, and then we talked there about our fellow councillors, how they can feed into this, but also our town and community councillors. Anything else, members? So, Councillor Gary.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think for me, it was around, just getting to that point of realising bits or parts or all of this strategy and this vision as efficiently as possible. So it was around that sort of roadmap, if we're setting this and adopting it and accepting it as a good, strong strategy for economic development and nature growth and all of those sorts of things. Let's begin to shape out how we get from where we are now, from this aspirational vision to improvements on the ground for all of those reasons that we've said, and yeah, just how we as councillors need to support that, what you need from us and from our communities to help do it, or do you just need some quiet space in a dark room to begin working on it? I don't know, but just a little bit around how you think you'll get from A to B to C would be very useful.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm guessing, this is going to be an overarching strategy when it's finalised, but within that is going to, I assume, be lots of other documents about how we deliver specific things in reality and on the ground, as it were. Yeah. Everybody's looking blankly at me. Yes, Diane's nodding. Thank you, Diane. Okay, Councillor Pete.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I guess Dan's got the list of questions, so don't need to run through all of those. But I guess just a couple of key ones from that for me would be the understanding of the funding, the internal and the external, and in the implications of either not getting external and what would we have to do internal. So I think that funding is quite an important one. And the other one for me, I guess, is just how this links with other policy areas, just to make sure, if you like, that we're all aligned in one area isn't fighting against the other area or contradicting the other area.
Yeah, so balancing up within the council the needs of each. Yeah. Okay. Councillor Bryan.
Thanks, Chairman. There's a lot of emphasis on the green power, and as a member that's got 27 pylons going through his wards and the energy park very closely in Aberedo, does it put a lot of emphasis that powers are supporting green power with pylons and wind farms?
Diane.
Councillor Davies, I think we were trying to really stick away from the larger energy schemes to actually look at the smart local energy systems. So how we can support communities to create their own energy and make us more sustainable from the future. And we can only hope that that model is adopted across the whole of the UK, which will negate the need for these kind of huge infrastructure projects across our lands. And I think the strategy very much does kind of push towards looking after our land as an enabler for economic development. So I'm hoping it plays to that strength rather than works against us.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to add something in there. We've talked about the needs for the new technologies and those jobs that haven't even been invented yet, and ensuring that our young people are ready for if it's not 21st century or whatever's coming in the future. But also we talked about a little bit in the pre-meet, the need to retain skills in the traditional skills as well, and that we need to sort of remain sight of that. So it's how we keep both things going in harmony, so that whilst yes, there are lots of new skills that I'm certainly not equipped to be able to discuss, but we will always need our traditional tradespeople and craftspeople as well. And if we can ensure that we're training and encouraging all those trades across our county. Yeah. So if we could add a sort of recommendation on that. Anything else, members, or are you happy with that now? Have we got that list? So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 recommendations there that we've read out. Are you happy with them? Do you want me to read them out again? Can you remember what I've said? All happy? Okay, lovely. So thank you very much for...
Can I just have a show of hands just for the minutes, please?
Oh, yeah, okay. Show of hands, sorry.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Gemma. She's keeping us in order. Well done, Gemma. Sterling job there in the background. So I want to say thank you very much to Dan and to all the team. Oh, Councillor Glynn, did you want to come in there at the end?
Yeah, just very quickly at the end, if I could, Chair, just to thank the committee very much for your feedback, and looking forward to working with Dan, Diane, and the team to bring a paper back to ERC for adoption then at Cabinet as well. So yeah, look forward to reporting back soon.
Thank you, Councillor Gillin. Actually, that's quite an important part of the process now. So this paper now goes to SLT.
That's sorry, Councillor Preston.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's back to Dan and his team to work up a paper and incorporating some of the comments that you've made and recommendations that you've made today.
And eventually then it'll come back to us and then go to Cabinet to be signed up. Okay, lovely. Well, thank you very much. And I think, team, the committee will agree that having early sight of this has been useful. It's something we've commented on in the past, that we've sort of seen things when they're too far down the line to change. So thank you very much for bringing that to us now. And we look forward to seeing it in its more finalised form. So thank you for that. Okay, so members, moving on. The next item on our agenda, let me just make sure because I've swapped things about. Yeah, is our the scrutiny recommendations from Cabinet. So these are recommendations coming back to us from our previous recommendations, and these were from our meeting on the 12th of the 6th, where we talked about the customer experience framework, and we made 5 recommendations, 4 of which were fully accepted and 1 was partially accepted. So looking down to what that one was. So it was our recommendation that the committee suggests that future consultations should include direct engagement with service users at the point of contact. We've got quite a long response there of what already happens and why they're not going to fully adopt that, but I mean, it is more or less there. Members happy with that? Seen the paper? We're doing quite well, actually, members, on having our recommendations fully adopted. So well done, team. Good work. So that's how we're influencing the decision making there. Okay. No comments. Right. Lovely. So I think that's us done, actually. All items are covered. Unless members have any comments or observations you'd like to make at the end. No, in that case, we'll draw the meeting to an end. Thank you very much. And if the members would stay online for our 5 minutes of reflection. Good morning, Councillor Jake. We got the leader with us. You turned your camera on. Did you have any comments or anything you'd like to say?
No. I just put it on at the end so I could say goodbye. I've really enjoyed the discussion on and the debate that you've just had on the presentation. Lots of stuff there, so I won't interfere at this stage. I'm just happy to have listened in.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you, Leader. Okay, members, so thank you very much. Formally bring this meeting to an end. Thank you all for joining us, officers, Cabinet members and members of the committee, and enjoy the rest of your day. And as I say, if the committee members would just stay on, that'd be good. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr.